It's not a lot of substance in any of the proposals put forward by Republicans to fix our country's immigration system. But there is a vision. It's cruel. It's awful. It won't fix a thing, but it is a plan. So what's the Biden administration's plan? Well, as far as running the country properly, it's been pretty comprehensive and effective. Wages are up, inflation is under control, the stock market is hitting records, consumers are feeling more confident, manufacturing is coming back, and God forbid, if we have another pandemic, our supply chains are stronger. America has rallied all of NATO and 20 more countries to fend off Russian expansionism in Ukraine. Our success there is probably keeping the Chinese from invading Taiwan and the North Koreans from blowing stuff up. The Biden administration has a lot to brag about as we head into 2024, but we have seen time and time again that those issues are not registering with voters. Biden just isn't getting credit for them. For the most part, Biden's campaign so far has been about what he said he was running for in 2020, a battle for the soul of the nation. And don't get me wrong, protecting democracy and preventing our nation from slipping into autocracy is actually more important than inflation or the climate or abortion or immigration, because without democracy, you cannot debate or fight for any of those things. But Republicans are bringing the issue of immigration front and center for 2024. So what is the Democratic Party's vision here? What is the plan? Joining us now are the former 2020 presidential candidate and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and former mayor of San Antonio, Julian Castro, and the Pulitzer Prize-winning staff writer at The Atlantic, Caitlin Dickerson, an immigration expert. Thank you both for being with us. I really appreciate it. Secretary Castro, let me start with you, because when you ran for president in 2020, you did make this central. You actually, it's the one thing you have in common with Republicans. You said this is really an important issue to us as Americans, and you had you had plans about how you would deal with both the border and the concept of immigration, which are different things. In fact, you even thought about what to do about the countries from which many of these migrants were coming from and how to help them, move forward. None of that has materialized into real policy for Democrats.
Unfortunately, Ali, it seems that too oftentimes Democrats are afraid to talk about this issue. And because of that, they're often very defensive on it. They try to avoid it. They may make policy pronouncements or put forward legislation, but don't really spend any time talking about the details of that or putting forward an overall vision that is based on the values that we share as Americans, that this is a country of immigrants, that says that we can manage migration effectively and also humanely, that we can both deal with the flow of people today and also make sure that we address the root causes of immigration so that people can find safety and opportunity at home so they don't have to seek it in the United States. In that vacuum that exists, Republicans fill it with boogeyman politics, with fear-mongering, with all of the kind of dog and pony show politics that we saw Speaker Johnson engage it at the border today. They do it over and over and over. And Democrats need to flip into a mode of going on offense instead of being so defensive, or else the public is going to buy what Republicans are selling.
Caitlin, you have spilled so much ink on this. You understand the distinctions between immigration policy, border flow and management, which is its own thing, and the root causes, their own thing, why people are coming to this country. They are separate issues. If Democrats really wanted to lean into a solution to this, all they need to do is read your stuff. What can they do to own this issue as opposed to, constantly being on the defensive about it?
Well, thank you, Ali. What I hear from voters is this same question that you are echoing very loudly right now. What we hear from elected officials on the Democratic side, including the president, is just these no's. No, we shouldn't get rid of asylum. No, we shouldn't close the border. No, we shouldn't enact mass deportations. And then the question is, well, what should we actually do instead? I think that what almost all Americans agree on is that they want a system that works. And what most Americans agree on is that they want a system that is humane. And I think starting from a place where you have a functioning system, where you address the immigration court backlogs, where you have a place for people to go to apply to get a legal pathway into the United States if they've gone through vetting processes, that seems to be the baseline. And I agree that Democrats have been too scared to put forth any ideas as to how to go about doing this. I mean, there are a lot of resources being spent on border security and a lot of resources being spent on immigration. And there are people who know how to reorganize them to make this system work. It's just a matter of coming out of that defensive crouch that Democrats are in currently and actually putting forth a position, a plan.
Secretary Castro, you talked about creating a pathway to citizenship for people who come into this country. We have a 3.7% unemployment rate. Wages have done nothing but go up for the last few years. So this strange argument that immigrants make wages go down has been disproved several times. But even I remember talking to John Huntsman when he was governor of Ohio many, many years ago. He was one of a number of Western governors who wanted work permits and ways to get migrant workers into America for agricultural work. We've since realized we need people for manufacturing work, for construction work. The need for immigrants is acute in this country. It doesn't seem so hard to figure out what's the system by which we will manage that, determine who it is we'd like to let into the country, determine how the pace by which we let them in, and fix the problems that Caitlin were talking, because they're just problems. They're logistical problems more than they are anything else.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting on a 3.5% unemployment rate right now in the United States, and there are a lot of industries that already rely on these immigrants for labor and jobs that unfortunately Americans don't want to do. And that's the reality, whether people like it or not. That is the reality out there. And this area of the need for this immigrant labor and our economy, I think that's an intersection where you may see some progress in the years to come. Unfortunately, in the last few years, that business end of the Republican Party has not had a strong voice when it comes to trying to muster support for these kinds of measures, compromises on immigration reform. In fact, you don't hear that argument very often anymore, but it is a reality. We know it here in Texas. We know it in other border states and throughout the country in places like Utah that you mentioned. My hope is that as Congress continues to pursue potential legislation, the economic needs of the country as it involves these immigrants will be under consideration.
Caitlin, one of the things you and I have talked about for a long time is that this has been a decades-long failure by both parties. This could have been fixed a long time ago. But this cruelty was not a hallmark of the Republican Party. In fact, former President Bush, Jeb Bush of Florida, they all have views about immigration and immigration policy that are much more in line with mainstream views. The cruelty is not part of the way they see things. They do see things as the Secretary says, from a sort of an economic perspective, that we need these people in our country. We don't give birth to enough people to supply our workforce on an ongoing basis. What's the shift in the Republican Party, and why has that worked so well? Where is this from? I know that some of it was Sheriff Arpaio, and some of it was Donald Trump coming down the stairs at Trump Tower when he announced his candidacy. But when did that shift happen?
Well, I would say the shift has actually not just occurred within Republicans. I think the entire country really has moved to the right on immigration. I think that starts with Donald Trump's rhetoric running in 2016. And I think that it continues today because, as you've said, Republicans have so well harnessed this message. And when you combine very scary rhetoric with a feeling of scarcity, which is always an issue to some degree in this country, whether we're talking about, moments when unemployment is higher, unlike now, or when you're talking about being in a pandemic, we've got a lot of social issues in this country, a lot of people who feel like they need help. And so when you have a scapegoat put in front of you, pointing the finger of blame, it's a very powerful message, and it's a convincing one. Joe Arpaio was sort of famously unpopular. I mean, he was an elected official. He had support, but not somebody who could have run for president and won. And now the entire Republican slate of candidates hoping to run against President Biden are repeating these messages of Donald Trump. It's important to point out, though, you asked me earlier, what works, what should be on the table for consideration? Deterrence, and in particular, policies that are really, really harsh and cruel, taking people's children away from their parents, subjecting them to awful conditions in detention centers for months at a time. These deterrent measures do not work.
Yes.
At curbing
They're just cruel, and they don't solve the problem.
Right, exactly.
Secretary, when you and I met, you were the mayor of San Antonio. The mayors in this country are in an interesting situation. There are Democratic mayors of cities that either consider themselves officially sanctuary cities or don't, but they generally have positive views on immigration, who are now feeling the squeeze because of these buses and these airplanes that are showing up in cities around the country. These are cities and governors now who are pressuring the federal government to say, you got to solve this problem because now these migrants are in our towns and our states. Again, it's a ruse, but it's working. It's Republican governors like DeSantis and Abbott causing northeastern mayors and governors, Democrats, to put the squeeze on the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, it's using these migrants as political pawns. It's cruel, but it's not dumb, pure politics if we're just analyzing the politics of it. And it has had the desired effect of making these mayors pressure the Biden administration to come up with resources. Here's the thing, Allie. The Biden administration has pushed for more resources for whether it's New York or Chicago or other places, and also for some fixes like allowing these migrants to be able to get work permits more quickly so that they can provide for themselves while they await an answer on their asylum claim. But Republicans won't go along with that. At every juncture, they actually block potential solutions, and then they scream about how broken the system is. That is the tragedy. That is the folly here, and that's the hypocrisy of this Republican Party.
I'm going to ask our viewers, if they haven't done so, to look up everything Caitlin Dickerson's written. In fact, recently you've had a remarkable piece that earned you a Pulitzer Prize, and I think it's just important for people to understand this is not a solution that doesn't have answers. It's not an unsolvable problem. Secretary Castro, good to see you as always. Thank you again. You had made this a major issue when you were running for president. You are two of the best people to talk to about this important issue.